Yeah, I think it's 7:30 or 6:30. Guess we'll go ahead and call this ELEC committee meeting to order. So would ask for a roll call, please.
Petrie. Schrader.
Here.
Langenheim. Berkson. Harper. Kurtz.
Here.
Esri.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you. Okay, next we'll move on to approval of the minutes. Could have a moved by Patsy, seconded by Mr. Harper. Is there any additions or corrections to be made? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Move on to approval of agenda and addenda. Is there
So
any?
moved.
Thank you, Mr. Kurtz. Second, Mr. Schrader. Any additions or corrections to be made? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? That passes as well, thanks. Is there anyone for public participation? Does not look like it. So we will move on to communications. Is there any communications to be made? Seeing none, we'll move on to the first item of action. Items to be approved by ELEC. Items A, and I guess we could take an omnibus, if that's agreeable, an omnibus motion for the first A, 1 through 3 and 4.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Kurtz, seconded by Mr. Harper. Is there any comments, questions?
You have to read them into the record. I think we have to read them into the record.
Okay. Well, first one would be for Alto Vineyards at 4210 North Duncan Road, Champaign, excuse me, for the time period 1/1/14 through 12/31/14. Number 2, CC Pink House Incorporated, 2698 County Road 1600 North, Ogden, again 1/1/14 through 12/31/14. Number 3, Gordyville LLC, 2205 County Road 3000 North, Gifford, 1/1/14 through 12/31/14. And number 4, Lake of the Woods Bar and Liquors, 204 South Prairie View Road, Mahomet, 1/1/14 through 12/31/14. So if there is no other questions or comments, all in favor? Oh, go ahead, Patsy, sorry.
This is just an information question and mostly for the public. These are annual renewal of their licenses. So the question that I wanted to focus on, is it done in a staggered way? So it's when their first date of application for the license, and that's what triggers the renewal? The reason for asking is we have 3 this time, all with the same date. Or have you systematized this in some way?
Well, actually, we have 4 R&E
Well, 4.
licenses. They're all annual, so that it's all the same period. These are sent to the committee as soon as we can send them after they are received. And we invariably receive them at different times.
Okay,
And there's always a few that don't get approved until January. But in fact, we've never had any problems with that.
okay, great, thanks.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of approving these renewals, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, that passed. Thank you. Go on to B then, the annual renewal of hotel motel license, Harry Home Incorporated, DBA Motel 6, 1906 North Cunningham Avenue, Urbana, 1/1/14 through 12/31/14. Need a motion on that, please. Moved by Mr. Schrader, seconded by Mr. Kurtz. Any comments or questions on that? Again, it's just the annual renewal of business that's been there for a long time. Seeing no other comments or questions, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? That passes unanimously as well. Thank you. Okay, item to receive and place on file by ELEC Committee. Report on RPC planning contract item, LRMP priority item 5.1.8B, feasibility of an intergovernmental agreement regarding control and jurisdiction of property outside of the 1.5-mile municipal extraterritorial jurisdiction. Moved by Mr. Kurtz. Second by Ms. Petrie. Comments or questions on this? Yes, Patsy.
Can we suspend the rules with approval and ask Andrew Levy to come up and just give a general overview of this? You'll have to suspend the rules. Oh, okay. Okay. If Andrew would not mind, just, and this also will help the public have some idea of what we're covering here. Thank you.
Never mind. I love talking with you all. This is an item that was placed on the fiscal 2013 county planning contract with the Regional Planning Commission. It harks back to when the Land Resource Management Plan was being developed. At that time, there were just some ongoing issues, and there have actually been ongoing issues in the extraterritorial jurisdiction. So that's the area between or outside of municipal boundary and inside of planning or county zoning jurisdiction, where there's always some issues coming up. Municipalities can place annexation on land in these areas. It falls under zoning, county zoning jurisdiction. So there are different forces at play in these areas, and we always look to these areas for growth and development. Sometimes those are in conflict with priorities. So this goes back to kind of how we address those locally, how we look at these challenges locally, and how we deal with them. In 2009, there was some legislation, state legislation passed that allows Champaign County to retain jurisdiction of areas that are not subject to annexation agreement. This was a fuzzy area in terms of state legislation prior to that. That was clarified after the LRMP was adopted. So we really just wanted to go back. The county retained jurisdiction. You have a resolution stating that. You're really up to speed with everything related to this issue. So just wanted to kind of bring that to your attention, remind you of that. This was a priority item in the Land Resource Management Plan. So just wanted to address that. Aside or attached to the memo is kind of a recap of all of these events that have happened leading up to these. That's the background that I was able to come up with about this. There's the one remaining issue that we have identified are instances where annexation agreements expire. So usually there's a 20-year time period on these annexations. If those were to expire, and development had occurred on a site subject to municipal approval. So somebody's property outside of the municipal boundary, but within this 1.5 mile jurisdiction, gets approval from a municipal body for any development to occur. It falls under their rules, their regulations. If these annexation agreements expire, then there's kind of another gray area. What happens? Will it fall back to the county? And what if those changes that occurred on that property don't fall in with the county's rules and regulations? This is still something we have not experienced that to date. We don't really expect that to occur, but it's one of those kind of fuzzy areas that we don't really know how to deal with, and that we'll be monitoring. So far, we've had great cooperation with municipal staff in figuring these issues out when they have come up. But it's one of those things to just kind of keep in mind, and we have that documented here. So that's the basic rundown. I'd be happy to give you any more information, answer any questions.
I have a follow-up question, since you brought up expiration of agreements. Is there some method that has been put in place either at the county level or the municipal level that sort of is a trigger mechanism when expiration dates are maybe 6 months down the line, so we don't get ourselves into this gray area?
At the moment, there's not an active protocol, an active procedure on how that happens. You know, the municipalities do track that. They do, you know, review that. Most municipalities that I work with have a list, continue to monitor those lists. When the issue comes up, yeah, usually 6 months ahead of time, even a year, maybe 2 years ahead of time, when they know that it's going to happen, they'll contact the county, and usually, you know, things get worked out. Usually, these annexation agreements get extended. That's been the general practice. So, you know, it's not a formal procedure, but we really don't see it as an issue at this point.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, John, go ahead.
I didn't come prepared to speak tonight, but this really, really does bother me. This except within the mile and a half thing that we've been fighting on with the municipalities for years, those folks that were within the mile and a half jurisdiction of the municipalities have no representation at all on the municipalities. We are their government, and we're giving our authority to the municipalities. And that's wrong. That's not what we're here to do.
Go ahead, Adam.
Yes, please.
Andrew.
If I can respond to that. A lot of so Urbana, for a number of years on their city council, actually, there was a member, a resident of the extraterritorial jurisdiction that sat on their city council. Most municipalities in their code allow for ETJ residents to sit on their village board as a trustee or city council. So that is out there as an opportunity. Currently, no ETJ members sit on any councils like that. So it's kind of I agree. There is that representation issue, and that's constant. I think it's identified in here as an issue. I do think that is an issue. You're absolutely right. There are methods of going about that. I discussed this with our municipal, I guess the members, RPC member communities. In any planning activities, they try and encourage members or residents that live in these areas to participate. You know, again, it's not formalized, but they do make efforts to do that. Even the municipalities realize that this representation is an issue, and they make attempts to address that. I'm not sure if it goes all the way or goes far, but that's current practice.
Well, with all due respect, I think that's something that we need to work on as a county board, because those are our folks, they're our responsibility, and we ought to be taking care of them and not letting the municipalities cram it down their throats. And in essence, that's what they're doing. And we've witnessed it in the Muhammad area, and they certainly haven't invited anybody from outside to be on their village board, I can assure you of that. So I think that we as a county board need to look after our people. I'm not anti, you know, if the cities and the county can come together and it doesn't hurt anybody, and the people that live within this mile and a half is being treated fairly, I don't have a problem with that. But that is not the case, is it? And this here, just right here, is blatant. It says except for, and that's just wrong. And I will do whatever I can to get that changed. I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
That's fine, John. Mr. Kurtz?
Yeah, I agree 100% with John. But in this instance, John, we're just receiving the report. But I think in the future agendas, we should be able to address this as an item. Do you feel, John, that we can put something like what John is talking about on an agenda item for discussion?
Well, if I understand correctly what Mr. J is talking about, that's actually a legislative, state legislative topic. And, you know, the county can certainly choose to pursue action in the legislature, but that would be, you know, going against the wishes of the Illinois Municipal League, and that's a pretty formidable task. But I would encourage that if that's the way the board feels.
I don't buy that, by the way, but I think we need to pursue that. I'm sorry, but with all due respect.
Sure.
And
Microphone, I guess, if you go to.
I'll quit.
Okay, anyone else? Ms. Petrie again.
Then to follow up on these two comments, what would stop the county from bringing forth and maybe passing a resolution that does encourage or maybe even shall that there is representation on any of these ETJ committees when it comes to that point? Is there anything in the statutes that would stop the county from taking that step? Are you aware of anything, Andrew?
I guess, I'm not sure what you mean by ETJ committees. I guess what I was referring to were village boards and city councils. Those are entirely under municipal control. So there's really, you know, advisory information. You know, I think the municipalities are very open to this. They've had representation in the past. And as I said, currently there, as far as I know, there are no members sitting at the moment.
Okay.
Does that answer?
Mr. Kurtz?
Thanks. Andrew, is there any way for us to be notified when these come due, to let us know if there might be a problem so that we would be, at the very least, informed as to what's happening within that mile and a half? I know the municipalities, you know, have a timeline and a list, but we don't. Do we?
I mean, I think it's all public information.
It's all public information, but could we
available.
be informed as the ELOC committee when those things, if there is a problem? At least so we're aware of what's taking place within that mile and a half.
I'll let John respond.
John?
Well, as Andrew mentioned, we came very close recently to have an annexation agreement be annulled because neither party to the agreement was happy at that time. And in fact, there had been development, and in fact, that would have been brought to you if it had happened. But I believe that both parties, in this case, a municipality and the landowner, have decided to continue with the annexation agreement. And so we missed that narrowly, but we missed it, and that's important. Otherwise, we have a list of when annexation agreements are coming up to expire. We don't keep track of it, frankly, because we have lots of other things that we're responsible for. And so, you know, we will know in general when there is a problem.
Sorry. So if there is a problem, we would be notified.
Yeah.
But if in the normal course of events, if things go smoothly, we wouldn't need to be notified.
Exactly. It's just like Andrew's memo says, we continue to staff this. Actually, on a weekly basis, we're reviewing these things. We won't bring it to the committee or to the board unless it's necessary.
Okay.
But we do try to catch those things early so we can bring it in a timely manner.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah, go ahead, John.
Just very briefly, one of the frustrations I had when I been reading the new proposals, and some of them are new and some of them are, I forgot maybe. So, but again, my real concern isn't that I want to be an adverse opponent to the municipalities, but I don't want us promulgating state law, for instance. That's not our place. If the state's made a law that supersedes us, let them enforce it, not us. Don't write it in our ordinance. It's not necessary, with all due respect.
Anything else, or even anything else from you, Andrew? Okay, seeing no other questions or comments, I guess, call for approval of receiving this and placing on file. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you, that passed. Okay, next we have direction by the ELEC Committee, guidance regarding a preliminary engineering report for Wilbur Heights. And we have Susan Chavaria here to give us some information on it so that we can maybe give some direction back to her.
Thank you. Good evening. Since about August of last year, the Regional Planning Commission has been tasked with looking into issues and possible solutions for the Wilbur Heights subdivision. It's located just to the east of the Marketplace Mall off Market Street in Champaign. It's an unincorporated area of about 35 acres or so, and it has a lot of issues that are decades old, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with this. They have issues with draining. They have issues with what used to be residential areas being put into industrial zoning and the conflicts that arise through that. We also have issues with lack of road maintenance. We have conflicts about who actually should be doing what in terms of maintaining the infrastructure that's out there. We have lack of coordination in terms of what might be enforced through zoning. And so there's just a wide range of issues that have been identified and then further strengthened through our most recent study of this area over the last 5 months or so. I wanted to go ahead and point out page 44. It's a map for you, just in case you're not too familiar with the area. It's bound by North Market Street on the west side and by the Canadian National Railroad tracks on the east side. And then we have Wallace Avenue on the north side of the subdivision and also Wilbur Avenue on the south. And within that area, we have a variety of jurisdictions that you can see on the map here, perhaps. Summer Township is the main jurisdiction for the land area within that boundary. But we also have City of Champaign surrounding that. They don't have jurisdiction over the land, but they do have parts of the roadways in the subdivision. We also have Beaver Lake Drainage District, which covers the entirety of the subdivision. We have IDOT, which covers about the eastern 2/3 of Wilbur Avenue, and it's an unmarked state route. Canadian National Railroad owns the land on the east side, and there's actually a basin there, intended or not. It's where the subdivision, about a quarter of the subdivision drains to. Okay, so it's a problem that we have that's on their land, but it's not their responsibility because it's not an intended use for that basin. We also have a Soil and Water Conservation District. You know, they have an ability to go in there and take a look around and make recommendations and help us analyze things. We've actually asked Jonathan Manuel here from the Soil and Water Conservation District to be here tonight just to give us a little insight. He did go out to that area and take a look at the basin out on the railroad tracks to see what's going on out there. So in a little bit, I'll ask him to come up just for a minute. Then we have this kind of no man's land area, which is down in the southeast part of this, outside the subdivision, where there's no drainage district. It's not within a municipality. It's not within a township. It's just there. And part of the drainage issues could be resolved by doing something in that area potentially. So besides that, we have Champaign County, which, because this is an unincorporated area, there are possibly some things that the county could take on in the future that might help resolve some of the issues out here. So with that, I think that after 5 months of looking at this area, we can look at some somewhat lower hanging fruit in trying to focus on drainage and roads. The zoning issues are long-term, not something we can really resolve anytime soon, if at all. But I think we can look at improving the infrastructure for helping both the residents and the commercial areas out there. There's about 20 different industrial businesses, as well as 59 residences left in that subdivision. So I have a map of drainage issues that I handed out to you this evening. I think you all have a copy of it. And the blue areas on there are areas that I just kind of eyeballed onto a GIS map, but they're areas that were drawn by residents and business representatives from the area during 2 public meetings that I had up in the subdivision in the fall. And as you can see, there's pretty widespread drainage issues. Some of them are related to people taking it upon themselves to fill ditches in front of their residences. Others are because commercial areas are deciding to increase the depth of their terrain on their land, which causes flooding issue on the land adjacent to them. And other things are like the drainage ditch that is on the Canadian national land, that it's not an intended basin, but it is where the water flows, and there's tires and debris and all sorts of stuff down in there. So with these drainage issues, I think that it's really hard to say what should be done without doing a study. And because we have the township, that it's their responsibility to take care of the roadside ditches and to keep those cleaned out if they can, and to maintain the roads. But they don't have the money for any systemic improvement. They don't have the money to look into what would be systemic improvements, or to even look at what exactly the issues are, where exactly the water's flowing. So we're looking we recommend that the county hire a contractor, an engineering service, to do a preliminary engineering report, to try to figure out what some of the issues are in this area exactly related to drainage, and also to identify some potential solutions and cost estimates, so that amongst all these jurisdictions in the future, you have something very solid by which you can make decisions about what could be done for that subdivision. Between all these different jurisdictions, it's really down to the township and the county and any available grant funding or external funding possible to fund any solutions that might come about. We have what is, I guess, a positive thing in that the IDOT road, which is about like I said, the eastern 2/3 of Wilbur Avenue, we have communicated with IDOT and with Summer Township, and IDOT is offering to transfer that road to Summer Township for what is a very nice sum of money to build that road up to what it needs to be, and also to give them money for maintenance over the next 25 years. And in doing that, they're ready to fund that as early as 2015. And we think that it would be a good idea to integrate any drainage improvements possible into that road improvement for those that are any issues that might be alongside that roadway. You can see from the map, there's quite a few ditches there that regularly get flooded, so it just seems logical to do everything all at once. So I'm requesting that the county moves forward with getting this PER report to get it done in time so that the construction design for the road can also integrate drainage solutions, okay? We have Jeff Blue, who's also been from the county highway, also in on the conversation between the township and IDOT. He's willing to put in some engineering time so that things will be less expensive for doing that roadway. And he's also willing to do some preliminary work on it in terms of finding out what exactly is the surface out there to make sure that the road gets done right. There's apparently, residents say, some parts of that roadway that have a stamp from 1939 on it that you can see. And so with the heavy trucks, the fire department that's at the end of Wilbur Avenue, and the residents along there, it's a road that they often won't use. And they'll actually go back in the residential area to travel through the subdivision to avoid that roadway. So with all that in mind, we're hoping that we can move forward with at least this preliminary engineering report for drainage improvements to maybe get the ball rolling on something for this part of our community.
Is that all you had for now? Okay. Questions or comments? Mr. Schrader?
Well, I'm the guilty party on this board. I was in ZBA when, I don't know how many variances we granted out there, John, for sheds and other stuff. Side yards, backyards, heights. So I'm the guilty party on this board. Well, I don't know who decided to draw straws over there at RPC, but unfortunately, it looks like you've drawn the short straw on this job.
I'm kind of
because-
enjoying this role, actually. It's been a fun puzzle so far.
You're a trooper then. Well, I obviously there's something needs to be done there. I think what you've got in zoning, you've opened up the bottle and the genie's gone from the zoning standpoint. From here on, you can try and make improvements or corrections out there, but what's out there is out there, and we're pretty much stuck with it. But there definitely needs to be something done with the drainage and the roadways out there, and there's just no money out there, unfortunately. That's the problem. And I don't have a problem with doing a study with this. It's gonna help getting some IDOT money, but that's gonna go fast. And where we go from there, I don't know who's on that Beaver Dam Drainage District.
I spoke with Lyle Brock. We have Joseph Earl, and there's one other person, trustee on that. And I spoke with Lyle Brock just the other day. I did want to, now that you've said something about the available funding, I did want to say that a preliminary engineering report is a requirement, a prerequisite for looking for the CDAP funding that's out there, which is the main kind of grant funding that's available for this kind of improvement for our communities. $450,000 we could apply for if we had a PER in place as part of our application package. If you don't have a PER, you can't even apply, so.
Yeah, I just, it's gonna take some time, I think, before we can really make a dent out there, but I guess now's as good as time as any. Good luck.
I also should say that I've solicited 4 businesses as well as Summer Township for funding toward this PER. I have commitments from 2 of those businesses as of today. It's not a lot of money, but it's something. And so it shows that there's a willingness to cooperate out there. And I'm just waiting to hear back from Summer Township still. They've had some other personal things like with Ken Mathis and Max Recycling burning down and things like that have taken away his focus so much on this for now. So, but there's definitely interest out there to getting something moving.
Mr. Kurtz?
Yeah, I agree. We really have to correct John's mistakes here. It's something that, it's long overdue. But honestly, this has been an area of concern, Wilbur Heights, for us for a long time. The residents here have sort of been like second-class citizens. Everybody says it's somebody else's responsibility. The breakdown of responsibility here is just a mishmash. It's like a puzzle on who controls what area. A 4/10 of a mile of this part of the road is somebody else's, and then 4/10 is ours, and 5/10 is Somer's, and then there's the IDOT, and it really needs some leadership to move forward. And John's right. I think we need to take some kind of control, and I certainly believe that if we want to apply for that $450,000, we need to move forward with a study for these, to just relieve what's been going on here. And I would agree that we need to move forward on putting some dollars into a study. Now, I'd love to keep it in-house if we could. If Jeff says he could do some type of it, how much of that engineering can he do, and could he take the whole project if necessary?
No, he can't. Jeff Blue is transportation related. You need a drainage expert to look at the drainage items. And so that's where we'd look for someone who, an engineering firm locally that has a good reputation, maybe one the county's used before. We don't, I have recommendations, but, it just depends on, if you have any guidance on that. But Jeff would be able to do the design and construction engineering for the IDOT jurisdictional transfer project. Okay, so that's going to take less money to do that, which might give more money to put toward drainage improvements or something else related to the roadway improvement.
Mr. Harper?
I know where we're all talking about, but is there an existing drainage district out there now?
Beaver Lake Drainage District it takes up, there's a very small map of it on that jurisdictional map in the bottom right corner.
It's one of the smallest parts of the Beaver Lake Drainage District. This is one of the Beaver Lake Drainage.
Which way's that water run?
It's massive. It runs to the CN
In
tracks.
the Wilbur Heights.
It runs to the railroad track?
It runs
Oh,
to the
that's
CN
wonderful.
tracks, and we have no jurisdiction. Once it gets in, what do we do with there's like a drainage pit there that's covered with trash.
I
mean,
gotta
it's-
say, if it's by the
and
railroad track, it's
you
probably
can't-
all screwed up, so.
Well, we just, hello, you just can't walk in there because it's CN property. And so we'd have to talk to well, would we be able to approach CN on something like this?
Okay, a couple of things. Jonathan here, who's from the Soil
John-
and Water
can
Conservation
John-
District, he went out there, he can come on up here,
Yeah,
he's
John,
got
could you
pictures
please?
of that ditch.
Well,
And-
mean,
my
it-
concern is, I mean, I know there's been problems out there, and I've been on some of them roads, and they're terrible, but you can't fix the roads till you get the drainage,
That's correct.
otherwise those roads won't last again. so.
The southeast quadrant of the subdivision drains toward this ditch at the CN tracks, just right southeast of the subdivision. The other 3/4 more or less goes to the northeast, which eventually goes to the Beaver Lake Drainage District's tile. It's about a mile away, though. So these people are paying taxes for Beaver Lake Drainage District. Even though there's no tile from the district in the subdivision, they are paying for what eventually goes to the district's tile about a mile away.
So is there any way to run surface drainage to that, or would you have to tile it?
There's, I did go out there. Susan, honestly, Susan's worked hard to try and not have to spend this kind of money on a study, honestly. She did ask me to go out there and look, and I did. She only asked me to look at the ditch on the CN property, which has collapsed, basically. It's a huge concrete culvert that has been busted open for about 100 yards. It has tires in it, junk all over the place. It needs repaired. And the other thing, though, is I've got a picture of it. There's standing water in what's left of the tile. I don't know where it drains to. It's headed towards Champaign along the tracks. I don't know where it outlets at, and I think that's one thing that needs to be found. But I went ahead and looked at the rest of the area while I was there. There are inlets on the streets, storm drains. They all are holding water. And when I was out there, we hadn't had any rain in months, and they were all full, still holding water. There's actually water still in a lot of the gravel parking areas. So I drove around. It's flat. Unfortunately, there's not a good way to do a surface drain, because that was my first thought. On the north side would be put in a nice grass waterway and get that water moving down towards that drainage ditch inexpensively for everybody. It's just too flat. There isn't enough grade there to be able to do that, even if we remove dirt. So an engineer will be able to tell you this much better, but I think you're looking at possibly a new tile, maybe a 15-inch from the drainage ditch up to the subdivision, and then you're really going to have to work work on the connections with the inlets and stuff within that area. I don't know, you'll have to work with all that. I didn't realize how many entities you had to work with in that area. It makes it very challenging. Normally a drainage district, you could just work with them and budget it in over a few years and everything could be taken care of without increasing anybody's taxes. But you've got a lot of issues there. You're gonna eventually have to need to work with CN to get that inlet. I don't know if it's been crushed because of all the heavy construction, new tracks, they're tearing down that elevator, or what happened, but I have a picture. There's some pretty stagnant water in there, a lot of junk, and yeah, it's a mess.
Mr. Schrader,
Wait.
that, or, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead then,
I'm sorry,
Al.
John.
Go ahead, Al. Go
Okay.
ahead, Al.
When you say stagnant water, are we looking at a mosquito or situation that could be a public safety hazard if in the summertime?
Oh, I definitely would, yeah, if it was me, in your position, I would ask the health department to put a trap out there because, yeah, it looks like there's been no drainage complete drainage in these areas. So, yeah, I would say it's definitely a possible mosquito haven. If I may, I can
Okay,
show you a picture.
I'm sorry, go right ahead. You have some
He has
pictures?
a picture on his
Okay.
tablet here, if you'd all like to see it, of the stagnant water in the culvert. This is the CN pipe
Oh,
for the
Jesus.
outlet. And it still has about 6 inches of water in it when I was there.
It's just stagnant, just sitting there.
Just stagnant. And you can tell from the chunk of concrete in the pipe that a lot of water moves through there. Because that had to get shoved in there somehow. And it wasn't thrown in there. Water moved it in there.
I tried to make initial contact with the railroad. I asked for contact names from the cities. And
you know, I'd like
I
you to-
emailed a person and got no response, so I'm gonna have to take a different tack on that and see if we can get some sort of communication going. But I think that it's also possible that maybe there's some other solutions that don't have to involve the railroad.
Okay, Mr. Schrader, you had another question or comment?
Maybe if you spoke French, that might help when you talk to the CN. My experience with the CN has been just short of an act of Congress, can you get them to do anything on their right of way, which is in this country, which is very odd. Like, my experience has been south of Tolono on Route 45, just at the Soros Road corner for years, that ground flooded in that northwest corner. It was a broken tile the district found underneath that railroad right away. And it took, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. They are just terrible to work with. So jurisdiction-wise, I don't know if we have a country left or not. If we can't get a damn tile underneath a railroad in this country without an act from Canada to do it, it's insane. It's obvious by looking at that tablet, Jonathan, and by the way, I know you've been around a year, but welcome to the county with this stuff. It's a lot of fun. I'm sure you didn't see anything like this in Piatt County.
I tell you, I still did not get the railroad to help me with my problems in that county, so I know exactly where you're coming from.
Well, the NS is a little bit better to work with. The CN is just impossible unless you can find somebody that's got an in with them. They're terrible, but I guess the study's gonna help us determine whether or not we've got an outlet through the Beaver Drainage District, or if we gotta go through the CN, which one's gonna be our best outlet, or if we're gonna have to use both of them as an outlet, because if you're gonna run drains in there, and obviously there are some, and that's gonna be fun too, trying to figure out what kind of maze or traps and everything else is in that place, because I'm sure it's all broken down, it's just a mess. This thing could be just millions of dollars you could pour into there before you can get anything fixed, because it's all established and it's mishmash, pish posh, everything else. And by the time you try to get outlets going,
I'd like to ask the engineers for another solution that, because I'm not an engineer and I'm really green on this kind of idea about drainage, but the Clifford Jacobs Forging Company has a pretty large parking lot not too far from that ditch. And they have a vested interest in the subdivision, and I'm wondering if maybe some sort of detention basin might be able to be constructed on their land, or maybe the Stark Excavating land or Deuce Construction land that is also very nearby the ditch.
just follow up with that, Susan, that's probably in the city of Champaign, isn't it?
No, it's not.
It's unincorporated, that parking lot is? All right.
So I'm going to ask if you give me permission to look forward with a contract with someone to look at solutions that don't just rely on the 2 drainage basins that we're dealing with right now, but maybe other solutions that might solve the problem.
Pat, or Patsy, did you have something? Yeah, but you haven't spoken yet on this.
Oh, okay. I have a number of questions, most of them informational. As I look at Summer Township here on the map, is there any data that's obtainable from Summer Township that will give us any indication where the pipes are running in that area?
To my knowledge, there are no pipes, that it's just ditches.
Oh, just ditches? Okay, only ditches. All right.
And that's all that they have told me that they maintain. That they haven't mentioned any other type of maintenance except for the ditches.
Okay. And as I recall from your memo, you indicated to us that the drainage district is not flush with money to contribute to a project.
Correct. I did an estimate on each I looked up each parcel in the subdivision, commercial or industrial and also residential. And the taxes they get total a little over $1,000 a year from the subdivision itself.
Okay, all right. I am glad to hear that you would encourage some alternative ways of solving this project, because there's a lot of potential out there on things that can be done.
Absolutely.
There's cisterns, there's a lot of things that are even more low-hanging fruit than what you've already discussed. And I do understand the need for an engineering study as the opening the door for any grant applications. On the other hand, I do encourage you to let Barbara Minsker know about this enticing, complex problem, not the zoning aspect, but the drainage aspect for her CEE class. And we've been working with her class, when I say we, the John Street Watershed, and that's just prime group of students to bring in to not do the engineering study, but then to add another layer of creative problem solving on this. Okay.
Mr. Harper, do you have something else?
Quick, yeah, if you're doing your studies, are you going to look at if there's a possibility to run service drainage? I mean, you say it's flat. Would you, if you really get in there and survey it and see if there's any way, I mean, if you can get rid of surface water, that's still the fastest way to get rid of it, but
Right.
I don't know if it's,
I
I've
would
never
leave
been
it up
back
to
there.
the engineers to determine what would be the most likely and viable
Yeah.
of the solutions to look at.
If there's, I guess, no other questions or anything, it is down as to give direction, so I guess it'd probably be in form of a motion if someone wants to make a motion.
I'd like
as
to move that we move ahead with engineering study to see if we can make some take corrective action in the Wilbur Heights area. Is that sufficient?
My only question, I don't know, should we put I'm just thinking a money limit on it of some kind, or
Deb?
How about if you direct Susan to investigate and bring back to you a contract proposal for an engineering study because we really don't know what the cost will be, and maybe she even talks to more than one engineering firm to get a proposal to bring back to you, and at that point, you can recommend approval of that proposal to the Finance Committee, because the next step is going to be to identify the funding to pay for it.
That's my motion.
Okay, if Beth, if you got the gist of that, moved by Al and seconded by Patsy. If there's more discussion on that, Patsy?
Just clarification, if I'm remembering correctly, from your memo, you alluded to $20,000 to do this. That puts it underneath the bar of where we have to go out and do an RFP or bids. So I think we need to fold that into our conversation, that if you find out it's above that, some procedural steps to make certain that how we go about that. Okay, thanks.
Any other comments or questions about the motion on the floor? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. 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 All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Susan. Thank you,
Susan.
Jonathan.
That's a wonderful job. Thank
Thanks.
you. We really appreciate your work here. There's a lot of detail there that helped us out, and it obviously looked a little bit complicated. But I thank you for your work on this. Thanks.
Okay, moving on. Item 10, or number 10, item to be approved by ELEC for referral to ZBA, deferred from November 2013. Preliminary review of a proposed stormwater management and erosion control ordinance to meet part of Champaign County's MS4 obligations. And we have Andrew, back again. Yeah. Okay, moved by Mr. Kurtz and seconded by Mr. Schrader. And I guess now then, if you have a presentation, Andrew, or just want to.
Yeah, I guess, John, do you want to introduce anything or say what we're looking for, or just jump right into the presentation?
No, I think your presentation is pretty brief, to the point, and might help the committee, and shouldn't take that long anyhow.
It'll get going. So this is a kind of a overview presentation. You have the ordinance, you've had the ordinance since November, so hopefully you're somewhat familiar, but maybe I'll give you a little background where this is coming from. In 1991, Champaign County adopted a interim stormwater management policy. That's Resolution 3160. In 2003, it was amended through Ordinance 679. The goal of this, the purpose of this, is to guide developers' attempts to control the transportation or movement of stormwater. There's a little more detail in that policy, but it's really guided the county on stormwater issues related to site development. It does not include information about erosion and sedimentation. These are connected issues, but not dealt with in this stormwater management policy. So this presentation is about erosion and sedimentation controls. The reason that we're doing this is Congress mandated under the Clean Water Act the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, NPDES. This is a program for addressing non-agricultural sources of stormwater discharge. The Clean Water Act prohibits discharge of pollutants through a point source, which would be a pipe, into a water of the United States. That is also a defined term. Unless the discharger has this NPDES permit and is in compliance with the conditions. Champaign County falls under this as of 2003. Champaign County was designated as a small MS4, which is Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. Along with that, in this area are the cities of Champaign, Urbana, Savoy, and then the University of Illinois. Fountainhead Drainage District is also in the MS4 group. The NPDES requires 6 different what they call minimum control measures. They're really just things that they expect NPDES permit holders to do. Everything from public education and outreach to pollution prevention, good housekeeping, making sure you maintain your records. What we're going to focus on is highlighted in red: construction site runoff controls. These are selected activities that are intended to enable construction sites or construction operators, builders, to manage the stormwater that falls on their site and reduce pollution, including sediment, soil, from running off of the site along with stormwater. More specifically on that, the MS4 operator, Champaign County, is required to have an ordinance or other regulatory mechanism requiring implementation of proper erosion sediment controls, so on and so forth. There are very specific things that we have to do, or that Champaign County has to do related to this, and that is why this ordinance, this draft ordinance, is before you. Hopefully you can see this graphic. I know it's a little fuzzy. On the left, you'll see forest land. What this depicts is erosion rates based on land-based activities. So you'll see at the far left, forested land, 1 ton per acre per year of soil erosion, going up to active pasture, 2 to 4 tons per acre per year, farmland, and then you'll see way on the right side, bare soil, unmanaged construction sites, significant amount of erosion possible on those sites. So that's why construction sites, that's why we're talking about construction sites and not just anything. We're really focusing on how construction sites deal with this issue. Problems, again, picking up pollutants, sediment, debris, that can include, or that does include soil. NPDES requires that clearing, grading, and excavating under certain conditions have to undertake activities to protect against these polluted discharges. You'll see the picture, looks like suspended solids, likely soil, draining into a sewer. That's what they're looking to prevent. That's what EPA is looking to prevent. So there are certain things that, I guess, those activities are generally referred to erosion and sediment controls. Certain things that you can do include keeping areas of disturbance small in size. So if you're developing a parcel, you can not grade the entire thing. You could leave a tree, create a barrier around that. Existing vegetation is really the best and cheapest way of preventing erosion. So that's one thing. Here, just a kind of short list of things that can be done. Stabilizing areas, the second picture down is erosion control blankets. Those are things that can be used generally on slopes to avoid erosion. Minimizing velocities of water flow, other things. So really there are some pretty simple basic things that can be done. The task is for Champaign County to regulate and enforce this. So you'll see site plans. That is a way for Champaign County to, essentially have developers explain to the county how they're going to do this. Look at putting up silt fences. I'm sure you're all familiar with those. Hopefully they work. Sometimes they don't. Another big thing is construction entrances. You'll see kind of a driveway. You'll often see gravel or some sort of rock into and out of construction sites. Very important to maintaining soil on site. Oops. So this is a fairly detailed table. I won't explain all these, but really just identifying concerns, specific concerns, and then how this ordinance deals with that, the methods that we're looking for in order to do that. We are adding some requirements. We are requesting that construction sites do a few extra things, but it's really based on these very specific concerns that the county is required to address. In doing that, we are looking at, you'll notice that the permit that we've identified as a land disturbance erosion control permit, LDEC. So we're really focusing on these issues of land disturbance. Throughout Champaign County, anywhere there's development, there are a few things that can be done. The stormwater policies that have been in place since 1991 and amended in 2003, those will continue. That's something that we're not proposing really any changes with. It's something that we expect to continue, and that will occur throughout Champaign County. This supports that land disturbance where subdivision, zoning use permits are required. These are all primarily parts of the existing stormwater management policy. We have identified in section 11 some basic land disturbance erosion control concepts that really fit within the stormwater management policy, and we think will adhere with what EPA is looking for. Then we get down to the nitty-gritty. this MS4 jurisdiction. You'll see it noted in orange. That's where the land disturbance erosion control permits would be applicable. It's 10.2 square miles of our much larger county territory. So we're really only looking for this in these areas. We've identified administrative procedures, liabilities related to this, and enforcement protocols related to these permits. There are exemptions, agriculture being a big one. Land disturbance of less than 1 acre in some cases. Those some cases, I guess, if it's part of a larger development that would add up to 1 acre, that would fall under it. But in general, land disturbances of less than 1 acre, cemetery grave sites, emergency conditions does not have to come in and get a permit. So there are these exemptions. Here, a little more detail. We have minor permits, and we're proposing major permits. This is really to abide by the law that the state has established, do the intention, but not require anything extra. The major permit is something that construction activities already have to do. It's no added, nothing more. They already have to, or they're already supposed to notify the county, so it's really minimal across the board. Administration and enforcement of these regulations are going to be through the Department of Planning and Zoning. Again, the activities that they'll undertake are in sections 13, 14, and 15. The technical appendices are to help anybody who's trying to do this. John and I both realize that this is a bulky document. We have received a number of comments from people about the draft ordinance. Very helpful for us. We're always looking for more of that to help prepare this. But those technical appendices are there to help people fill out their application, know what they need to do. Next steps. We'll take any comments from this committee. We want to go back and revise the draft ordinance based on your recommendations, some comments that we received from Mr. Jonathan Manuel. He gave us some great comments as well as a few others. And then upon your recommendation, begin a public hearing at the Zoning Board of Appeals as early as February 13th, and then look for ordinance adoption no sooner than July 2014. The reason that those dates are there are because the EPA will be, Illinois EPA will be auditing Champaign County's MS4 program this spring, likely before July. They are looking for some of these things to be done. These have been on the books since 2003, so we're looking to make progress. The EPA, IEPA is really interested in progress on these issues. They understand that it's a relatively unfunded mandate to do this, so they're looking for progress. They know that we can't do everything, but getting progress on this would be a really big step and really positive step for Champaign County MS4 program. With that, I'd be happy to send it to John for any additional comments or any comments from the committee.
Key thing, since 2003, anything that disturbs an acre, that creates an acre or more of impervious area, we're on top of that. But that's about impervious area, and this new mandate is for land disturbance. You may not even be creating an impervious area, but if you're disturbing an acre or more of land, you're already supposed to be doing these things. This ordinance that we have drafted, as much as possible, we've modeled it on what Champaign and Urbana have already adopted. They've already had their ordinances in place for a couple of years. It was a help to have that to start off with, but when it came right down to it, we're a county. We have everything about us is much different than what the municipalities have. So it doesn't look a lot like what Champaign and Urbana have, but it's very similar, and that was our starting point. And as Andrew said, and we can't stress this enough, we expect to be audited by the EPA, IEPA, sometime this spring. In fact, we've already gotten some comments from them about this draft ordinance. I expect we'll receive more comments from them, and I hope we do. We sent it out to 48 local contractors, builders, and engineers, some of whom have told me they plan to get comments to us, but unfortunately, we haven't gotten those yet. We will do our best to make sure we can get some comments from those folks during the public hearing, but we have to get to the public hearing. And so I hope you're ready to recommend this to the public hearing, but if you have more questions, why, maybe we can answer them tonight.
Mr. Kurtz.
Yeah, this is a mandate. We have no choice. What I'd like to make sure we do is that we're in compliance and that the IEPA sees us making substantial progress, or at least some progress towards it, because they're giving us leeway here because they know this is a complicated issue and it's going to take us time for us to evolve all of the steps that we need to take. So I would recommend the board moving forward on this so that we can be in compliance with the law, and we can certainly make changes as we go along, making recommendations as we go along, but I think we need to move this forward.
Any other comments? Patsy?
Yes, several. I thank my fellow committee members for allowing this 2 months to gather comments, because you can see from part of our packet, there are many pages here of comments that I was able to get to. Andrew, Jonathan did some other people who are very knowledgeable about water and land disturbances. And thank you to Andrew for taking the time to do the second column with comments back to those comments, because it's going to be an iterative process, and it's going to be a very educational process for all of us. And I hope that other people who have great knowledge base come forward during the public hearing. That's so important for getting a really good working document. I do hope that all of the extra papers that we were given this evening in your PowerPoint presentation will get up on the website under the ELA committee so other people can see this. And I will take it upon myself to let the folks who sent you comments that they can go and look at the document. And so thank you very much for putting it in our packet this evening.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Two things I do need to touch on. Andrew and I are doing our best to draft this ordinance so that it does what the county has to do. And if we go beyond that, we'll flag it for your attention. For example, you may recall, we have included some proposals here, some proposed basic requirements to apply throughout the 1,000 square miles of your jurisdiction. We don't have to do that. It doesn't require any new permitting, but it's sort of a baseline minimum to make sure that the most egregious kinds of erosion and sedimentation accidents, we're at least doing something to prevent those. I have to say, I don't think we have a lot of those right now, so I don't think it will be that hard to do that. But that's optional. You don't even have to do that. Secondly, the understanding that Andrew and I have is that the really complex part of this only really has to happen within our MS4 jurisdiction. We understand that the IEPA would like us to do that throughout the 1,000 square miles of your jurisdiction. I think that's their recommendation, but what I really want to find out is, what are they going to absolutely require? We haven't really gotten to that point yet in our discussions with EPA. Right now, based on our understanding, we think we can meet the EPA requirements with no new staff. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to have some more staff to help with this, but I think we can do the minimum with the staff that we have. If Andrew and I end up being wrong, if what the EPA recommended is actually going to be what they require throughout your entire 1,000 square miles, we will need staff. and we'll let you know that. But I'm not ready to say that that's what's required at this point. But when this comes back to you, there may be some differences. But when you take a vote tonight, what I really do want to know is, do you want these optional minimum requirements throughout the entire zoning jurisdiction, or do you not want those? Now, again, I think it's sort of a freebie. It's there as a fallback whenever we get a complaint. We're not going to actually be requiring that many things on site plans for basic zoning use permit applications, but it will establish a minimum. But again, at this point, I believe that's optional, and I want you to specifically tell us if you want us to include that.
And John, I'll add that those options were included in attachment B of the previous packet from November. If anyone has it handy, I do. So I'll just say that includes protecting existing drainage by prohibiting erosion and sedimentation that would flow onto adjacent properties. So it's really protection for adjacent property owners attempting to do that. Requiring proper disposal of construction waste and debris is another one. And then minimum erosion control standards for stockpiles that are near sensitive areas like streams and ditches. So it would be suggesting that people who, for that last example, that have large stockpiles of earth, of dirt on their property that would be close to a stream or a ditch may want to put in some sort of erosion control or sedimentation device to prevent that from entering a stream or a drainage ditch. Not requiring it, but suggesting that this is potentially going to cause an issue, and to avoid that, to avoid any problems that would require further work on their part, potentially do this. Those are the optional considerations.
Mr. Kurtz?
Yes, sir. I think those are good options. I'd like to see them included.
So that would be included in the motion?
Sure. Add it on to on my motion.
Anyone else? Any comments?
I seconded it, and that's fine with me.
So Patsy agrees, that's fine. Yeah, go ahead, Patsy. More comments or questions?
I applaud both of you for having that in the proposed ordinance. I was very pleased to see it when I read it last November, and in the long run, it's a taxpayer saving aspect to prevent additional reparative costs that would fall out if these things are not done. So from that perspective, they're very good additions, and thank you for doing it.
Any other, Mr. Harper?
Can you reread the motion now? I don't think Al remembers.
But Beth has.
Well, it's,
So Mr. Kurtz, he recommended that we move forward on compliance with the law, and that we move forward with the draft ordinance, and that it will include these options that Andrew just discussed, will be included in the motion. I'll fix it up. And then Patsy agreed to the friendly agreement.
any other discussion? Mr. J, anything to, I mean, if you want to.
Thanks for asking. I'm really opposed to this also. I think we need to do what you have to do. You're just opening up Pandora's box. You're making it so you can do whatever you want to do, not what's absolutely necessary. I think you're going too far.
I guess I might just add, you mean with those the extra 3? Yeah, that's what I figured. Anybody else? Okay, Mr. Schrader?
I'm not going to disagree with what John said. But I'm going to support this for tonight because we're just writing a draft ordinance. And when it comes back, we're going to have a good chance to debate this. And if we so deem to take it out, then we'll take it out then. But I'm going to just go ahead and vote for it to move it on.
Mr. Kurtz?
Yeah, I agree with John and John. We're just drafting this. Let's get it on paper, let's see where it goes, and then it'll come back to us eventually for a very long and detailed discussion on the entire ordinance. And we'll have Andrew around to help us with the complicated issue. Thank you.
Okay, are we ready to vote then? Looks like. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thanks. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're on to item 11, monthly reports from November 2013. Need a motion to approve them, I guess, initially. Moved by Ms. Petrie, seconded by Mr. Kurtz. Any comments, discussion, questions for Mr. Hall? Seeing none, all in favor to receive these reports signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? That passes. Other business, I don't know of any business. Unless anybody else has anything. Chair's report, there is no chair's report. There's no true items to move on to the consent agenda from this meeting. So I guess move to adjourn by Mr. Kurtz and second by Mr. Harper. And I guess we truly want to vote. All in favor? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.